Shall we start? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second edition of SCGN Talks, held in partnership with the Australian Trade and Investment Commission. This edition is themed Data for Better Cities. Over the course of the day, both Smart Dubai and Australian speakers brought together for this event by Austrade will share with us learnings from their experiences with data science and how public-private partnerships can help in building a data marketplace that will positively impact our communities. I now take the opportunity to invite Her Excellency Dr. Aisha bint Bati bin Bashir, Director General of Smart Dubai, on stage to deliver her welcome remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellency Mr. Ian Halliday, Consul General of Australia in Dubai, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us today, and we are delighted to be organizing the second event in the SCGN Talks series, where we are excited to explore a topic that has become indispensable for any kind of progress in the currently ongoing fourth industrial revolution. I take this opportunity to thank our partners at the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, Austrade, for their collaboration in making this event a reality. The SCGN Talks series falls under the umbrella of the Smart Cities Global Network, which Smart Dubai launched in April 2018 to be the largest international network for smart city stakeholders. As the government entity tasked with transforming Dubai into the world's happiest and smartest city, Smart Dubai is committed to organizing such events which bring together international experts and decision makers to focus on and explore key elements in smart city buildings. After a successful inaugural edition in March, we explored the concept of building a cashless society with our partners from the Swedish government. This second edition being hosted today will provide all attendees insight into how Smart Dubai and the Australian government are leveraging the power of data to generate value for their respective cities. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we will now begin today's activities, presentations, and also panel discussion, and explore how the emerging and powerful sector of data science can benefit cities and wield a positive impact on community at large. I would love to see more interaction between you and the speakers, and looking forward to see a positive impact on you and also on your organizations, and thank you.
I now invite His Excellency Ian Halliday, Consul General of Australia in Dubai and General Manager for Middle East and Africa region for the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, to share a presentation on Australian smart cities.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's fabulous to be here. I'd like to acknowledge Her Excellency Dr. Aisha bint Bati bin Bashir, His Excellency Yunus Al Nasser, His Excellency Wissam Lutar, and thank all the senior representatives of government entities as well as members of the business community for attending today's event. It is a very exciting time to be here today to talk about Australia-UAE collaboration in innovation and showcasing capabilities of both Australia and Dubai in smart cities. Thank you. Sorry, just get that sorted. Australia already has a very long-standing partnership with the UAE in food, education, infrastructure, and we have exceptionally strong aviation links with more than 130 flights a week. It is through these long-standing relationships that allow the sharing of knowledge and ideas, particularly for smart cities. We are very excited to expand this collaboration into digital and emerging technologies that are shaping the future of our economies. Our teams have been working very closely together already in a variety of emerging technologies that are citizen-centric, including most recently successfully collaborating on blockchain, a pillar for planning and operations of smart cities. In my 1 year in Dubai, I have witnessed the dynamic energy in pushing forward the UAE's innovation agenda. Smart Dubai's key role as an enabler in all this is to be commended. Those involved can feel very proud of your achievements to date, and well done and congratulations. And I read a very good article this morning in the Gulf News that quoted Her Excellency Dr. Bashir and the drive to a paperless society. So congratulations on the work so far to date. Today we have an excellent lineup of Australian speakers who will share their data-related experiences and learning from the actual projects that they have worked on. I take this opportunity to thank them, especially those that have flown in for today's event. Stephen and Kalish from the Gravity Group, Rick from Key Options, Steve from GHD, and Ashton from Blockchain Partners Holdings. I'd also like to welcome Justin McGowan, the Commissioner General Australia for Expo 2020 Dubai. Very exciting time when we only have 12 months to go for the start of Expo 2020. And also Professor Farhad from the University of Wollongong to provide relevant input on managing large projects and also the education and research development angle for delivering smart cities. To set the scene for today's Knowledge Exchange seminar, I'd like to give a quick overview of Australia's smart cities initiatives. New technology is revolutionising how cities are planned and function, and how Australia's economy grows. A future city or community seeks to be more sustainable, resilient, and livable for its citizens in order to succeed. Australian cities consistently rank high in the most livable cities in the EIU's Global Livability Index. Sydney, Adelaide and Melbourne ranked in the top 10 this past 12 months. Sustainability is the overarching theme for smart cities in Australia. Sustainable infrastructure leads to sustainable use of resources and developing capabilities for future smart cities. Australia's population growth is one of the fastest among advanced countries. The country's population is expected to grow by about 1.3% a year up to 2055, resulting in a population of about 40 million people, up from about 23 to 24 at the moment. By 2050, the population of Sydney is expected to grow from its current 4.6 million to 8.3 million, and for Melbourne, it's expected to go from currently 4.9 to 8.5. And for southeast Queensland, including Brisbane, the population is expected to go from 3.6 to 6 million. Nearly 60% of Australia's population will be in these cities alone. Australia is one of the most urbanised countries. Despite having an extremely large landmass, 86% of Australians live in cities. It is therefore natural for Australian companies to develop smart city capability to meet local challenges and then share these solutions with the rest of the world. As a major producer and exporter of bulk commodities and other merchandise, Australia expects road freight to grow by 50% and rail freight to grow by 67% by 2030. The combination of immediate requirements and sustainable planning means that the Australian government, in collaboration with research institutes, universities and the private sector, have to work together to develop relevant capabilities. The Australian government has allocated 100 billion Australian dollars for infrastructure projects over the next 10 years, with a strong focus on smart cities and connectivity to meet urbanisation challenges whilst delivering economic prosperity. Smart cities are a part of a broader ecosystem where transport, energy, civil services, smart environment and critical infrastructure are interconnected and interdependent. Technology can make cities more prosperous and sustainable. Real-time data and smart technology will lead to better utilisation of infrastructure, clean energy and energy efficiency, improving of service and better benchmarking of cities' performances. The Australian Smart Cities Plan supports investments in sectors commercialising new innovations to grow Australia's economy. A key requirement to allow startups to project their capabilities in niche areas where large companies might not have the resources to explore. Technological advancement is not new. However, the rate at which technology is improving and disruptions that come with it has definitely increased. Relying on big data to provide decision makers with the tools for developing infrastructure, such as the construction of new cities, and prioritising requirements and assessing feasibilities even before projects start. I would like to share with you now some examples of Australian innovation and sustainable developments that are part of the solutions for smart cities. You will also hear later on from our panellists and a presentation from the Gravity Group on data integration and the utilisation of data for complex decision-making for smart cities initiatives. Nabulytics, an innovative Australian company in data incorporation, partnered with leading Australian developers to bridge the gap on social analytics. The company provided critical data for city councils in Australia and the USA to streamline urban development planning, design and impact modelling on projects. This solution was essential for councils and planners to save resources in the lead up to project design and refine project priorities across all stakeholders, including developers, city councils, residents and state governments. MobileDoc, a freight delivery management application, was developed to address Australia's challenges in CBD mixed-use precincts and reduce congestions at maritime docks. You see in the photo Barangaroo in Sydney, a relatively new development, where MobileDoc solutions were implemented, resulting in managing 120 loading docks and 500 bookings per day. Complementary to these solutions are real-time environmental monitoring solutions that fit with the broader logistical challenges across cities, countries and regions, resulting in optimisation of transport and planning for business and policy. One Central Park, a major mixed-use urban renewal project in Sydney. The project showcases Australian innovation in collaboration with partners from Singapore and Japan to deliver a truly sustainable development. Two measures are incorporated in the project: a low-carbon power plant and an internal water recycling plant. Water resources include rainwater from roofs, stormwater, groundwater from basement drainage systems, sewage and irrigation water, and drinking water from the public water main. The vertical hanging gardens, where nutrients and water are dispersed automatically, and the cantilevered heliostat, reflecting light to the gardens and atrium below, are defining features of the building, showcasing innovation in energy storage and use. The heliostat operates a series of motorised mirrors that adjust to natural light, then reflect to all areas of the building. Sustainable smart cities present challenges for design and building capabilities, where the majority of the work is required for the upgrading of existing infrastructure. A number of Australian infrastructure companies involved in this project, such as Aurecon and the Robert Bird Group, are also based in the UAE, supporting projects across the region. And another example of Australian innovation is Cox Architecture, a leading Australian architecture firm that has been developing great projects in the Middle East region for a number of years, including the design of the Opportunity District at Expo 2020. Cox Architecture are pioneering the nexus between sustainability, smart cities and city-centric developments. As you can see, these are wonderful examples of Australian innovation and sustainable smart cities capability. So in conclusion, allow me to thank Smart Dubai for organising the Global Smart Cities Network that will further enhance collaboration between Australia and the UAE. Australian experts from government, education and the private sector will now share their experience in the design and implementation of data-centric technology solutions to improve the productivity and efficiency and livability of future cities. As Australian cities and Dubai continue to grow a vibrant smart cities ecosystem in a digital economy, there is a strong need to foster greater partnerships with key players in urban transformation and promote digital innovation to ensure smart cities are citizen-centric. There is a great opportunity for the UAE and Australia to complement each other, leveraging on each other's strengths to co-develop smart urban solutions. The Austrade team is available here today to connect with you when we have a number of the members of the team here today. So please reach out and make yourself known. So I'd like to thank you all very much for coming along today. I hope you enjoy the day. I think it really should be a wonderful occasion to share ideas, knowledge, solutions as we both strive for smarter cities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I now invite Hamda bin Dumaithan, Acting Director of Strategy and Regulatory Affairs, Smart Dubai Data, to share a presentation on Dubai's data journey so far and how Dubai is building a holistic data ecosystem to unleash the most value out of data for our city.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Hamda bin Dumaithan, and I head the Strategy and Regulatory Affairs Department within Smart Dubai Data, and I'm here with you today to present some of our efforts in building the city's data future. Now, in Smart Dubai, we aim to make data available to all. So whether you are a city planner, a business owner, or an individual, we are here to provide you with good, reliable data that you can use to make well-informed decisions, data that you can use to predict the future and to make for a smarter and happier city. And before presenting our efforts and how we make this happen, I'd like to show a short video on how data makes for a better city.
But how is it making your life better in Dubai? By making government and private sector data available to everyone, you can make smarter decisions about your life and your business. Basically everything you do in Dubai. On the Dubai Pulse website, you'll find hundreds of trustworthy data sets that will help you make smarter decisions. So if you're opening a business, you can research demographic and competitor trends in a particular neighborhood to make sure it's the right place for your business. Another great feature on Dubai Pulse is CityFlow, which provides a visual data representation of population trends in Dubai that can help your family make decisions about where to live and negotiate better rent or purchase prices. Data is also making artificial intelligence possible to streamline your day-to-day life. Rashid, your smart city assistant, is always available to chat with you about different aspects of life in Dubai, including help with visa applications, setting up a bank account, or even finding the perfect school. By making our data available to everyone, over 10.4 billion dirhams in value will be added to the economy per year by 2021. Smart Dubai, inspiring new realities. Visit us at pulse.dubai or chat with Rashid at rashid.ae.
So indeed, data does lay the foundation for a truly smart city. And our leadership has a revolutionary vision when it comes to us as a smart city, which is to make Dubai the happiest city on earth. And through building a thriving data ecosystem, we can make this future a reality. We believe that there's great societal and economic impact that can be realized from data. In fact, as you have seen in the video, according to a study that we conducted back in 2017, the city of Dubai stands to gain around 10.4 billion dirhams in GVA annually by 2021 if the public and private sector make data available. This is why it is our job and mission in Smart Dubai Data to help in creating new forms of value out of city data. We do this by increasing the availability of data, promoting the use and reuse of data, and enabling an entire robust data ecosystem. As you might know, our journey has begun back in 2015 with the issuance of the Dubai Data Law, which mandated that government entities publish their open data and exchange their shared data. And since then, we've taken many steps to enable this value creation through the issuance of the Dubai Data policies on how we can govern the exchange and publication and protection of data. We have created a data community of more than 380 data champions from 50 government and semi-government entities. And we have built the city's data portal, which today makes this data available for everyone. And we make this happen by focusing on four main pillars. The first of these pillars is value creation. Our aim is to work on priority use cases that would help drive decision making in the city. Additionally, we focus on data governance, where we develop policies and standards around the publication, exchange, and usage of data, and how we can have ethical AI systems in the city. In addition, we provide the technology platform that can make this exchange happen, whether it's through Dubai Pulse or through the decentralized platform that we're currently working on. And finally, all of this effort will not work without proper ecosystem engagement in the shape of development of use cases and city challenges that engage everybody in promoting a data culture. Our primary pillar is value creation. And how do we create value out of data? It's by promoting use and reuse of this data. And it has been our focus to create a mature data ecosystem that, on one hand, enables actionable information for policy decisions, and on the other hand, data-enabled city service applications. This is why we focus on data science that matters. And what does this mean? It means it's data science that focuses on predictive analysis, data science that focuses on information and not just data, and data science that supports our city leaders in shaping the city. To do that, we have looked at the data that we already have in Dubai Pulse, and we have identified around 16 use cases that can already address some of our most pressing problems as a city. Out of these 16 use cases, we've assessed them in terms of data readiness and impact on the city. And we have shortlisted 6 use cases that focus on human development, on businesses, on health, energy, and events within the city. Today, I'd like to shed the light on two of these use cases. The first is future skills engine planning, where we will use data that we have on Dubai Pulse to model the supply of skills that exist in the city, as well as the demand for these skills according to our ambitious city strategy. And accordingly, we will forecast the surplus and shortfall within these skills. And of course, this engine is meant to provide to be a tool for decision-making for policymakers who work in immigration or in the education sector, as well as individuals who are looking to change their careers or students embarking on their careers. We are also working on a smart business location assistant, which will help entrepreneurs and business owners to decide where to place their business to ensure that this business has a long life. One tool that we have already made available is the Dubai Economic Dashboard. This dashboard is meant to provide a modern economic intelligence to support city decision makers. And what's unique about it is that we're using data from both the public and private sector to get a different view of how the economy works in Dubai. The second pillar that we focus on, and in fact the foundation for many of our efforts in the city and within Dubai Data, is data governance. We know that navigating the regulatory environment can be quite a challenge. And we realize that regulatory ambiguity inhibits data exchange and inhibits data innovations. This is why it's been our focus and priority to reduce this regulatory ambiguity whenever possible and to issue guidance that helps entities in whether they are public or private sector entities on how they can properly manage, exchange, while still getting the value out of data. In Smart Dubai, we believe that data is a valuable asset and as such must be treated just like any other asset the organization owns. So what do you do with your assets? You inventory them, you maintain them, you make sure you assign responsibility for taking care of this asset to an individual, and you make sure that you utilize them properly. And what we have seen is that often organizations treat data as an afterthought. It's the result of other activities that you do, and proper data management is not put into place. This is why we have developed a governance framework, a robust operating model, and common standards that help entities to balance between unleashing the potential of this data as well as protecting the privacy and value of this data. And what we aim to do is basically to create a virtuous cycle where these governance tools help us in building trust, which will in return encourage participants, whether they're data suppliers or data users, to take part in the market, in the data market, demonstrate the economic and social impact of this engagement, which will again feed into building trust. And through this virtuous cycle, we hope to create a robust data economy where many activities around data take place. We have seen from our experience with government entities that having a common approach and having a common language when it comes to data truly facilitates the usage of this data. This is why we offer our governance tools to help entities properly manage their data, manage it in a way that enhances collaboration and innovation, and manage it in a way that ensures safe, fair, and easy exchange of data. Besides the tools that we provide for data exchange and data use, we have also developed a set of policies and principles that help organizations in having ethical AI systems. The toolkit that we have developed is particularly helpful, whether you are a private sector institution, a government entity that's piloting some AI use cases, or even an individual who wants to understand how exactly is your data being managed in the government. So whether you are a procurer, developer, or AI systems operator, we offer the tools today to help you have a fair, accountable, transparent, and explainable AI systems. Besides the set of principles and guidelines that we provide, we also provided a self-assessment tool where we provide entities with a way to actually assess their ethical performance. And this self-assessment tool has been put to use by different entities, and some of them from the government sector include KHDA, Customs, and DHA, who have assessed the performance level of their AI use cases. Of course, the AI Ethics Toolkit is a living toolkit, and we are constantly looking for ways to enhance this toolkit and to drive improvements, which is why we have a roadmap where we are currently testing the self-assessment toolkit and consulting different partners on ways to improve our ethical AI toolkit, and to look into ways on how we can implement it on both the local and the international level. Of course, all of this exchange of data would not be possible without the technology platform to make it efficient and effective and easy to do. And in April of 2017, we launched Dubai Pulse, which is the digital backbone of the city and our data portal. We started with 30 data sets back in 2017, and today, alhamdulillah, we have 473 data sets from different sectors and different organizations. Almost half of these data sets are made available as open data, which means that this is data that is raw, machine readable, and available for use with limited restrictions. So you can use this data for analysis purposes, or you can use it to develop products and services and commercialize of them. We have worked really hard with our government partners to create a repository of the city data and to make this data useful, discoverable, interoperable, and safe to use. And we have been amazed at the kind of uses that the data have been put into. We have seen how data about accounts being open and closed within electricity and water accounts, were put to use to understand how people migrate in the city. We have also seen how data about school registrations has been used by our retail partners to understand what kind of inventory and marketing decisions they make within their malls and their retail stores. And all of this data, of course, is available today on Dubai Pulse for everyone to use, and the possibilities are limitless. Besides our centralized data portal, we are also currently working on a decentralized marketplace. This marketplace will allow for ways to transfer and exchange data in a safe way. It will allow us opportunities to monetize this data and develop business models that will benefit private institutions, public sector, and individuals. We will take the central authority out of the mix and allow for the free flow of information. And of course, data ownership is a key component of our decentralized platform. How are we doing this exactly? We're focusing on 4 key elements, including technology, community, market, and governance. With technology, we're developing a platform that uses blockchain technology to ensure secure and immutable transactions. We are providing tools for tokenization and looking into peer-to-peer protocols. In terms of the community, we are working with our public and private sector partners to provide and seed quality data on the platform. And of course, we are working on ways to incentivize entry into this market, providing pro-competitive and fair pricing mechanisms, and ensuring that the governance that we put in place enhances innovation and is flexible enough to help in making this data marketplace work. All of these efforts would have been in vain without having the proper data talents to make use of this data, which is why, since the inception of the Dubai Data Initiative, we have worked on enabling our ecosystem. One of the main first activities that we did in Dubai Data Initiatives was create a data community of data champions from government entities. And we have worked on providing them with the training programs to enhance their data literacy. And today we are continuing these efforts through our data science lab, where we bring partners and stakeholders from private sector, public sector, and individuals to identify how data can help in solving city challenges, using design thinking methodologies to prioritize and filter the use cases that come out of this exercise, and then choosing the right resources and tools within the data science field to really bring insight to different stakeholders. And of course, we always work on engaging our partners from government entities. And since data is the first ingredient of any strategy, including AI strategy, blockchain, or digitizing the city services, we've created a data challenge that aims to enhance data governance, increase the availability of the data, and nurture a strong data community. Within this challenge or competition, we focus on 5 main components, including complying with the Dubai Data Law, participating in events, responding to data requests from the city or from other partners, participating in our data ingestions and truly contributing to the supply of data in the city, and supporting a data-driven culture within their organizations. This competition will run for 6 months, and today we have 35 participants from different entities, and inshallah in January of 2020 we'll announce the winner. To conclude, data in Smart Dubai, we believe that data is the future, and our role is to accelerate this future, whether it's by playing the role of value creator and a sponsor and incubator of many of these different use cases, or by playing the role of regulator and governor that provides the rules of participation in this data ecosystem, or by providing the technology that allows the exchange to happen, or convening different stakeholders to come together and think of how data can help in solving city solutions and really enabling our smart transformation. We work and we lead by example, and inshallah all of these efforts are to enhance the happiness of people and drive smart transformation in the city. Thank you everyone, and please feel free if you have any questions.
Thank you, Hamda. So now we will have a panel discussion titled, "What are the ingredients needed to drive full collaboration across data cities?" And I would like to invite the panelists, the panel's moderator, Richard Deeb, Head of Business Development of Smart Dubai, to introduce the panelists and lead the discussion.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I must say, it's going to be an extremely exciting session today because in the next 60 minutes, we'll be discussing on different ways how data, about data collaboration. So without further ado, allow me to introduce and welcome Mr. Justin McGowan, Commissioner General, Australia Expo 2020 Dubai, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trades, Australia.
Thank you.
Mr. Steve Scott, Executive Advisor UK, Europe and Middle East, GHD Advisory. Mr. Rick Wiley, Chief Executive Officer at Key Options. And Mr. Ashton Hityarachi, Chief Executive Officer at Accelerator 71 and Advisor Standards Australia. Welcome.
Nice to meet you, Richard. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Andrew Collins, Smart Dubai Data Advisor at Smart Dubai Office. Thank you. And finally, Dr. Ukan Jurey, Strategic Planning Advisor at Smart Dubai Office.
10
and
minutes by the time.
member and co-chair at the ITU group and focus group. So welcome, everybody. Governments around the world are opening up their data they collect. They are finding that open data can be used to identify social and economic trends, improve public services, build trust in the government, and even promote economic growth. Other city stakeholders, such as businesses or individuals, should find a way to participate into this data initiative. Starting with you, Justin, let me kick off this discussion with the following question. What are the key ingredients to drive a real collaboration between government, businesses, and citizens on a city data projects?
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone. I think this is a great initiative, and I'd like to start out by acknowledging Smart Dubai. I commend you on the progress you've made, and thanks very much, Humber, for your talk. I think a lot of the challenges and a lot of the things you spoke about are very similar stages to where we are in Australia, and I think we've got a lot to collaborate on and learn. And I will say, being part of the Expo 2020 machine, that I think that's such an awesome and fantastic opportunity to accelerate our learning. Collaboration has never been more critical, particularly with the pace of change of technology. So having an event like Expo 2020 allows us to come together, bring the world together, and really share those learnings and that knowledge that we do have. So Australia, being a federated nation, we're made up of states and territories and local governments and communities and the private sector. It's really important that we understand, having the policy settings and the framework that we're all operating within that is conducive to collaboration. So much like Dubai, Australia has an open first data policy. We have around 84,000 data sets available on our data.gov.au website, which is contributed by the public and private sector, which is fantastic. Whether it's all in the right form and whether it's clean data and whether it's available for immediate use is the challenge that we all have. But I think the first step is having those policy settings right, so we are very open and transparent. It's also helpful when you have strong governance arrangements, but also clearly defined champions. So champions at all levels, but within Australia, our Prime Minister has really set the tone. So the Prime Minister released a Smart Cities plan. He's has the digital transformation agency that reports directly to him, which talks about improving the services that we provide to citizens. So really having that strong leadership, as is the case in Dubai, is the same case in Australia, where the Prime Minister really is assisting in leading the charge there. We also have, it's really important from a collaboration perspective to have a shared sense of purpose. So why are we doing this? We often find that there's lots of opportunities to throw technology at a problem, but at the end of the day, we're seeking to make our cities and more efficient, more effective, more economically viable, and improve the livability. So that's really important. So having that shared sense of purpose, and the way in which we do that is through consultation. So consultation at all levels, particularly with the community. For the end of the day, that's who we're seeking to serve. So really hearing their voices, hearing their concerns and issues, and then reflecting them back. So, and that also outlining the benefits. So what are we trying to achieve? And I think that helps incentivise collaboration when people see really what's in it for them, whether that be public or private. And lastly, it's really about standards. I think standards and language. This is a fast-moving pace, and we have people from all different walks of life. And even today, I was listening to some of the taxonomy and the terminology today, which is not always consistent. So, starting the conversation domestically within Australia, let alone globally, it's really important that we have a very clear language that we all understand, and so that everyone can be up to speed very, very quickly. So, fortunately, we have some standards in place, and we'll talk a bit about that today, but we've got a fair way to go in Australia to make sure that we have standards in place that everyone can subscribe to. So I think, in terms of collaboration, it's really a mix of those things. Fortunately, in Australia, we have a yearning and a desire to improve, and there's a genuine will there to take advantage of technology and data, so I think that goes a long way. So we've got some great examples that the team will talk about today right around the country where we're doing some great work.
Great, thank you. Andrew, would you like to share some thoughts about this point?
Yeah. I mean, I think in your intro, Richard, you said that governments are opening up their data, and I have a slight contention with that. I think it has to be about cities opening up their data. I don't quite know what the proportion of data ownership in the city looks like between public and private sector, but I bet the balance is towards the private sector, which is why I think we need to do a lot of the things that Hamda was talking about in her presentation. And just to pick up on a few key words that have been said so far. Enabler, value, engagement are all super important. And I think in an organization like Smart Dubai, you have all of those things coming together neatly. You have to have the base understanding of the technology and what you can do with the data for sure. But it has to be so much about the cultural and the business side of things where I think now our emphasis needs to be. I think need to work super hard on the governance, which is why later you will hear Akmaral, our colleague, talk about AI ethics and what we plan to do there. And that is, I think, a really important example because so far with AI ethics, we have managed to, through the tools that we've created, raise red flags about how people are doing AI safely and responsibly. But we need to flip into more of an enablement setting in which we are giving the tools to the ecosystem, to the AI developers in Dubai to now lower those flags and push on and do AI more responsibly and more ethically. And this, for me, leads me on to another important point, which is this has to be about links to policy and links to outcomes and links to doing valuable things, things that are economically valuable. If you look at AI, it is lauded and vaunted and hung out there as the major economic opportunity around technology at the moment, with lots of sort of subdivisions underneath that. Unless we provide the governance arrangements, as well as the sort of technology platforms and the standards and all of those other cultural things that have been mentioned already, then we will fall short of our ambition there.
Thank you, Andrew.
Can I just chip
yes,
in?
please.
I guess wanted to emphasize, I think you mentioned purpose. And I think collaboration, standards, that sort of stuff is, will come together. I mean, there's barriers there, but will come together if there is that common purpose and vision. I think, you mentioned it in Australia. I guess from here, I think there's a stark contrast between Dubai, which has a very strong vision and that sense of purpose, compared to some of the other kind of regional places as well. So I do think that purpose and that vision is critical for everything else to start flowing from.
Vision from the leadership, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone being brought into that, I guess, that common sense of purpose.
Yeah. Moving to our second question, Rick.
Yeah.
Within an organization, how do you gather support and bring people alongside the data journey? And what data resources are available and working well in Australia?
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the invite, everybody. Fantastic session already. So that's a really good question because I guess, and I'm going to just go a bit across the other speakers, but the educational journey is probably one of the biggest issues with accepting data into organisations and utilising the data. And also another issue is the quality of the data and believing what the data actually is saying. So we find that sort of, and I don't want to sort of put people in particular boxes, but people that are more savvy with technology tend to engage with data more and do something with it than older people that really want to sort of, like print things out, etc. So the engagement at all levels of an organisation, whether it be government or private sector, is really important. So, and we've had a couple of projects recently whereby we've almost had to do an internal roadshow to show the value of the data and what the actual outcomes are. So by saying here's a bunch of data and it's all, green is good and red is bad, people don't want to see that anymore. They want to see what the value of that data is, and you've got to take people on a journey to say, this is what the value of the data is, and we know that it's good data, and this is the outcomes that are good or bad that are going to come from this data if we go down this path. It could also be said too that if you're taking that data and an organisation, and particularly when you've got in Australia where you've got like a 3-tiered level of government, you've got the federal government doing a great job at trying to sort of build things like with the data.gov.au, very similar to what Dubai is doing here, and organisations like Data61 that are doing some pretty amazing stuff in with big data sets, and providing the ability for state governments and local councils to bring that data in. The problem is that we run into issues of what's the value of the data, where's it come from, how much does it cost, and then once I've got that data, do I actually have anyone that can A, do something with it and can interpret that data? And if you don't have those levels there, then the data becomes useless. So it just becomes a point of collecting data for data's sake. As an example, 2017, over 67% of Australian local government IoT projects failed because no one knew what to do with the data. Okay, it was just there, it was a bunch of widgets. People went around, great, yeah, let's go and put in a LoRaWAN and put in some little trinkets here, and off we go, and we'll collect data, and away we go. But you could collect that and do something, but most people didn't do anything with it. And the problem was the interpretation of the displayed data. So a problem there comes into skill sets whereby you've got to find the right people to actually interpret the data. And it's not the data scientist's job to say, this is what you need to do with your data. You need a subject matter expert. So if you're an expert in, let's say, water flows, then that's the guy that needs to say, this is what you need to do with your data. Okay, so you need subject matter experts that need to drive what actually happens with the data.
That knows the business.
So again?
That knows the business.
Yes, exactly. So when you've got that and you've got a subject matter expert involved, then the data becomes more believable. Okay, and so then that's what you've got to do as your internal marketing campaign to management, etc., to say, this is what the data is doing. There's been a couple of cases recently whereby organisations have actually gotten rid of their business intelligence units because management didn't believe that what the data was providing them, because it wasn't the answers they wanted to see. Okay? Now, those answers were probably correct, but then that becomes the issue of the data science people and the subject matter experts to say, this is what we are seeing for these reasons, and here are your outcomes. Okay? I'll give you a very simple example. A friend of mine works in energy conservation for schools, so they put in meters, etc., to check where, what's happening, how much power they're using, because, in Australia, power is ridiculously expensive. So any money they can save is a good thing. So a lot of private schools have a business manager, and they do all the administration, facilities management, those sorts of things. So my friend they send reports to them every day, and they say, well, did you get the report? Yep, got the report, fantastic. So this one report went in at one particular point in time, and Peter rang the manager, said, have you read that report? And he goes, yeah, he says graphs and charts, all good. He said, no, did you actually really read the report and what it actually means? He goes, no, you tell me what it means. He said, if you continue using energy like this in this particular, for the next 3 months, your bill is going to be an extra $46,000. He immediately had the guy's attention because there was money involved. So the point of it is that whilst he'd been providing that guy with data, he wasn't invested in it, and B, there was no interpretation of that data. Now, that's a very simple example, but we can take that to all sorts of different levels. Okay? And that's why it's important that we have engagement at all levels, people that know how to put the data together to provide it in such a way that we can give the decision makers the tools to make the decisions they should be making, not based on what they think they should be making. I think, yeah.
Thank you. Justin, do you have any comments that you want to build up on this particular point?
No, I think Rick's covered that well. I think there's plenty of opportunities and some really good examples, and some examples that we'll bring to Expo as well. But you're right, it's that very basic fundamental principles and that people-to-people connections when we start talking about these particular issues, independent of the technology, it's that basic level of interpretation, and without those foundation building blocks. Unfortunately, we have University of Wollongong here as well. Just having that foundation in terms of education, so that we all know what we're talking about, is really helpful in this conversation. But thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Andrew, back to you. Earlier this year, Smart Dubai Data has launched a project called the Data Marketplace, as also Hamda displayed during her presentation. Could you shed some additional lights on this project?
Yeah. I'll be quick about it as well, and I'll probably ask Dr. Akon next to me to pick up on the commercialization and monetization points. But I alluded to this in my first comments when I said that I think the balance between public and private sector data in the city is tipped in favour of the private sector. And what we're trying to do here is to understand the motivations behind the private sector's unwillingness to share data. And there are some very obvious blockers to that. Private sector tends to operate in markets, ironically, and given that we're trying to sort of create a market here, that's quite a difficult challenge to overcome. But we think we can do so, and I think there's a technology solution, and I fully agree with what has been said so far on the panel. There is, we should not start with the technology. On one of Hamda's slides, it said data science, that matters. We do none of this stuff unless it is about value, and monetization and cost are false friends. Cost less so. Monetization and the driving of profit through data, I think, will follow, but you have to start with value, and you have to make sure that the data, you provide the means by which the data can flow from one party to the other. And that means that, yes, there will be a place for centralized platforms in cities, but I also think it's really worth exploring decentralized platforms as well, where you have different nodes operating in the city, and they can make data available using, as we've already heard, underpinning blockchain technologies, so that data can be traded on terms that are favorable and agreeable between two parties. And that could be an infrastructure company, a transport company, it could be a major lifestyle conglomerate like Majid Al Futtaim, who operate in a fiercely competitive market here in Dubai. But we really want to provide the space to experiment with decentralized data exchange, which is why later this year, not much of it left, we better get a move on, we're going to launch a decentralized sandbox. But that, I think, going back to a point that has already been made already, has to be about warming up the market, has to be, I think in one of Hamda's slides, one of our work streams is called community. We need to rename that community and content, because we need to find some things to do in this decentralized data exchange with some of this data that we have a really strong sentiment. We know it's valuable. We really need to put the sort of economic, the financial proof behind that and show that a market can work. But Akan, I said that you probably know a bit more about commercialization and data monetization.
We'll come to this point a little bit later about building also a data economy. But before, Ashton, I believe you have some thoughts around this point, the data marketplace.
Yeah.
I hope you agree.
I think I probably will touch a little bit about the collaboration part, because it's very important to understand the government and private sectors and also residents when they collaborate each other. What we need to mindful about, things that we need to pay attention to. So I kind of probably look into like 4 sectors. One's about the smart data, and smart collaboration, and smart infrastructure, and also smart community, what he mentioned. When you look at smart cities, it's very important that smart data, like what kind of data is important to get. You don't want to spend millions of dollars on infrastructure to collect useless data. So smart data, I can give you an example. The city itself or residents should be able to see about city a different perspective, having different insights and data. And also we also have to think about a different way of looking at data sets, like data sources. To give you an example, you could look at a sewage systems in a city, and then look at sort of a drug use of a city residents. So it could be look at the health overall. Also look at sort of a virus or bacteria outbreaks. So again, those data sets are not fitting in a normal, normal view of data that relate to this health. So and also going back to collaboration, it's very, very important to understand government departments and also private tech sectors has to work together. To give you one example, if there is a water breakout on a major road, each government department should work together, like RTA and also other government departments, as police and traffic departments, have to work together and collaboratively. So I think it's understanding of how different things should work together. Going back to incentives is crucial as well, because all lead back into useful data, how useful data, and when you have more useful data, people can make smarter decisions, and also for businesses can add value using those data. And one more thing I would just point it out, I mean, we talk a lot about standards and also building a lot of policies around. I work for Australian Standards. One challenge that we always come across is that we're trying to build a lot of standards and policies, but private sectors, they care about, using their data to deliver a better, better service for their customers and make money. And adding additional layers or providing additional standards and policies, they're not interested in learning and adding resources to actually learn these policies and so on. So we have to consider about the balance between giving so much policies and standards, how to incentivize and have the balance, because companies are not going to invest money, resources on learning new policies and new standards. So that's the point. But going back to the data marketplaces, I think we will cover in the next point. I think I have another question, then I'll follow up with that.
Can I make a super quick point, because I don't want to lose it? It's about IoT, and I don't want IoT to be a stranded asset. I think Smart Dubai has done brilliant work in terms of the digitization of public services, but that's a public services thing. IoT is about smart services out there in all those buildings, on all those roads and all those pieces of infrastructure. And if we don't attempt data decentralization, then we will not allow data to flow between those things and flow between the actors who, if we provide the right innovation platform, will generate serious economic value out of it.
Thank you. Building on what we just heard, Steve, how can we create value from data? Should it be dictated by government policies, or are businesses and citizens driving this change?
Okay. Well, I'll approach this from the point of view of kind of city planning, city management and development, because that's kind of our background. We're not, we don't collect data. We're the subject matter experts, I guess, that use it. And I guess for my perspective will be twofold. One is that, there is the monetization and the value of the data itself. And we, as sort of city planners and developers, we work with data companies, and there's that kind of monetary value of people have a set of data. We have to purchase a certain amount of data to do what we do. Often, getting back to the point of data for data's sake, we have to buy data sets, and most of it is not particularly relevant to what we need to do. So there's a lot of analytics, a lot of sifting just to get to the small data set within the large that we need to use. So there's that monetized side of it. But from my perspective, it is much more about kind of the value in outcomes that are created through this use of data. And I think Ian, in his speech earlier, sort of outlined some of the sort of examples. We're in a completely different landscape at the moment in terms of data availability than we were sort of 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We've worked with a number of companies and clients who have an enormous amount of data and don't actually know what to do with it. So kind of one of our roles is taking data that's collected as part of the day-to-day operations of a utility provider or whatever, and kind of using that data more effectively to help their management decisions, their investment decisions. So there's a clear value outcome there in terms of bottom line profitability and more effective, more efficient infrastructure development. The other angle is very much in that city space. So, creating cities, evolving cities, regenerating cities, as was touched upon earlier, is really about making places more connected, the livability of cities, improving the value and the lives of citizens and residents. And so the data that we use in trying to achieve that for clients is very, very important. We've moved from that static position of data into a much more fluid situation in my mind. And the example I'd put out there is looking at mobility and movement through, say, a CBD area. 5-10 years ago, we put a number of different access, survey points, counting the number of people through entrance A, exiting that part of the CBD in D or E. But it's very static. It's one person there, one person there. You don't know who it is. But, and you build your city around that. But the data held, and this is tracked everywhere you go. The amount of data held, on the mobile network is immense. So if you start using that data to do city planning, for example, we will know, it'll be anonymized, but we will know who kind of went through A, where they exited. So we know the exact journey of data point A, for example. We will know that where it came from. We'll know where it goes outside of the CBD. There's likely to be some sort of spend demographic information associated with it. So the granularity of our understanding of how that part of the city works, it's suddenly, it's multiplied 100,000 times. And what that does is allow us to better plan that part of the city or the whole city, improve our investment decision-making process, improve our management of assets and evolution of assets. So for me, it's, the value is in the outcome. We'll be designing better cities, more sustainable, and it's the combination. I think Ashton touched upon it. It's putting different data sets together that previously, one data set was health, one was transport, one was... Actually, when you combine those together, you get an enormous amount of intelligence. And it gets into the behavioral economics and behavioral planning for cities, if you like, as opposed to static.
Can I add one more thing into that? I mean, one point, when you're actually doing city planning, building frameworks, and possibly doing like policies around it, one thing we kind of doing research around this area, like when if you provide sort of a biased data into a system, especially machine learning or AI, it gives you output of biased outputs. So it's also important to consider, when you build a lot of smart city and then extract a lot of data, but kind of ignoring the legacy data that we've been collecting for the 20, 30 years. If you ignore that, if you rely on current system data, so within this Standards Australia, we kind of also concerned that this biased data, the new data, will give you sort of wrong directions. Often ignoring the legacy systems data might lead into some sort of a wrong decision. So it's important to understand, the both side of it, and also when you actually extract data and feed that data into a system where if you input a lot of biased data, we get biased outputs. So you've got to have that balance.
Yeah. Can I just add an example to that? Is it okay?
We
don't have time?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, right, that's right.
Building on this question, a subject that is very dear to my heart, which is commercialization and monetization. So, Doctor, we've been silent for a while now. In your opinion, how can we create value from data and turn it into a data economy, based on your work that you've done with the ITU focus group? Can you share some light and explain to us?
Sure. Thank you, Richard. I'm going to start off, and I will actually limit the scope maybe to commercial perspective. So I will be talking about only monetary terms maybe, rather than the social good and the environmental impact that we can have. And I will start by saying that data intrinsically has no value, but the data economy is worth trillions of dollars today. And I hope I will convince you along the way.
Okay.
If we look at data, actually, data by and in itself has literally no value. If I say 100, what does it mean, right? That's the data that we have. But if I say 100 is the percentage mark that I got in my last exam, that's great, right? I got 100% grade in my exam. So we contextualize data and create value from it. Or if I say 100 is the number of accidents that I had in the last 5 years, that's not good, actually. Right? So it's all about the context that the data sits in that creates the value. This is very important. So we talked about interpretations in the panel. These are all about contextualizing the data and creating value from it. And it's very important. So how can we commercially create value even? Not just, assigning a value attribute to a data set or a data, but create commercial value. Now, this is actually the tricky part, because we have to take the data, contextualize it, and in real life, we call those as use cases, right? This is what we do. We take the data set, create a use case out of it, and then we can start monetizing it and determining the value of it. So again, without too much theory, I will give you an example. So let's take a data set of, for example, new cars that will be sold. And imagine that we have that data set. As soon as the customer decides, we know where the cars will be sold and how many cars will be sold. Now, can we commercialize this data set? Yes, we can. The first context that we can say is we can provide consumer financing, car financing, for the car itself. So all of a sudden, the financial institutions would be very interested in providing financing for the cars. This is one context. So, we created value out of it. And we can put maybe a dollar value behind that data set. But interestingly, the data is the potential is so enormous that it doesn't have to be a single scenario. It doesn't have to be a single use case. We can create another use case from the same data set and say, what about the insurance for the car? All of a sudden, we target the insurance sector, right? And imagine they have access to how many and where, even if we know the locations of those cars, that's going to increase their revenues, but also reduce their costs. Because they know they don't have to spend so much sales and marketing anymore. They know exactly where the cars are. Yeah. And I can extend this. I can bring it to car accessories even as a use case. I can bring it to car washing, right? So you can extend this list. So to determine the value of a data set is a challenge by itself. And putting a monetary value behind it, because we have to think about all these use cases and who are the customers, the consumers of those use cases, and think from their perspective and assign a monetary value. Now, this is the nice part, the good part. But the bad news is probably there is no well-defined methodology for doing it today. We've discussed this globally with cities, with experts in United Nations. The valuation of data and pricing of data are major challenges today if we want to commercialize. Because to be able to do these two, and they are separate from each other. The value is the total value that we have, but maybe that total value will be broken into different customers. So the total value is $1 million, but it will be paid by 10 customers, 100 customers, 1,000. So the pricing becomes a challenge in and of itself, separate from the valuation. Yeah. So this is all theory, right? But this is the reality, and there's so much work that needs to be done in terms of defining the value and the pricing of data. But then if we take the economic perspective, we can say who decides on the value in the economy today? It's the markets, actually. We have all these methods for valuation, even in market value of companies, for example. There are methods. But at the end of the day, it's the markets that determine the commercial value of companies or of data also. Now, the question is, do we have those markets? And markets are very important because markets bring the buyers and sellers together. So they can, exactly, supply and demand need to come together. And also put a price tag. So the market determines the price tag. We say data is the new oil. Excellent. But if you look at the oil, the prices are pretty well defined. Yeah. There's an elastic market. There's quite a bit of competition. And there is also a pricing mechanism behind it. And the buyers and sellers. But if you look at the data today, that mechanism of even the markets don't exist today, right? And we are taking the leadership as Dubai and doing, for example, the decentralized exchange for data today. So we are creating this mechanism of bringing buyers and sellers first. And most cities don't have it today. Most nations don't have it even. And once you do that, then we have to determine, we have to put certain, monetary value behind it. But we don't have that competitive market to determine the pricing of these data sets yet. Yeah. For oil, that's not the case, right? There are certain factors. There is geopolitics, there is the demand, there is the supply, there's OPEC, for example. So the market is quite well defined, the market mechanism overall. But for data, it's probably not so well defined at the moment. But if we roll back 100 years ago, oil was in the same situation. I read actually stories about oil, and we were discussing in United Nations, same challenges were there. So nothing is different.
Building on just what you said, Dr. Ukan, what are the factors in sustaining a data economy? So,
yeah, data economy, at the end of the day, it doesn't sit in a vacuum, but it's in a larger ecosystem at the end of the day, right? So there are certain factors that shape and impact this ecosystem. The first one is, and that's pretty actually strict, are the laws and the regulations for it, because those literally tell us what to do, how to do things, and what not to do also. So laws and regulations are very important factors. Not only those, but also policies and strategies. Those are not necessarily mandatory, but those are direction-setting important things which create demand for the data economy. So when a smart city strategy, for example, puts in place certain action items using data-driven solutions, implementations, that creates demand for the data economy. So in addition to laws and regulations, we have policies and strategies and standards as well. Standards are very important.
Yeah.
It's very important because that allows interoperability in the entire ecosystem. If we don't have standards, we will have silos almost floating in a city and globally also today. And these discussions are taking place in G20 today and in the United Nations. When we talk about trade, for example, when we talk about exchanging goods and services globally, data is the real nut, the tough nut to crack at the end of the day. So standards are important, but in addition to those, to build the ecosystem right, maybe thinking a bit more long-term, data skills are very important. Data R&D programs are very important. Each and every nation has their own, and city has its own challenges. So from those challenges, we can create R&D programs and invest in the people, the pipeline that will address those issues. SDGs, for example, Sustainable Development Goals, are the common global challenges. These are a given set, but in addition to that, each and every nation and city has its own particular challenges. So we can come up with our own R&D programs at the end and build the skills around it. And additionally, also data entrepreneurship and data entrepreneurship and startup mechanisms like accelerators, incubators, all those will help to flourish this ecosystem. And also financial incentives to startups. There are many cities, we were discussing actually in United Nations, how can we flourish this ecosystem of startups, of entrepreneurs? Should we give tax breaks, for example? I'm not talking about UAE, of course, but many countries are looking at tax breaks, tax holidays, loans at preferred rates, for example, to flourish this ecosystem at the end. So all these factors at the end shape and impact the data economy. The data economy is not in a vacuum. They are all surrounded. These are peripheral factors almost, but they literally shape the future of the data economy for us.
Thank you, Doctor, for sharing that nice picture about the data economy. Ashton, I believe you have
just maybe 2 points. When you think about like building frameworks and standards and policies for people to come and build things, I have a little opposite view on that. Often innovation, like all these challenges, and as well as like a lot of breakthroughs come from garages, from bedrooms. So often we don't know what other people are going to create that. So putting frameworks and policies in place may not be appropriate. It depends on the cases. To give you an example, like another thing that we might have to look at, what are the, if you talk about decentralized sort of a network or a decentralized sort of a protocol where people can build things, we have to look at or think about use cases that native to blockchain. That only fit within that blockchain frameworks rather than thinking more normal business use cases. So we possibly need to have incentives and easy to build things on those frameworks. So to give you a quick example, in Sheikh Zayed Road, if you collect a lot of data about the traffic, an entrepreneur can build a small dApp to deploy a courier company so they can they can build an app for a courier company, whether they want to deploy a bike or a lorry, depending on the traffic, because you have a much more accurate data. Again, that sort of a business use case will fit within that sort of a data that didn't exist before, and have a tokenomics models or incentive models built in that the people don't have to be here in order to participate in that ecosystem. They can build from elsewhere because of the decentralization. So I think it's be open about, because a lot of innovation will come from bedrooms.
Yeah. Can I make a comment about governance on that point? Because I think it's the governance people are the real sort of backroom boys and girls of smart cities, really, and it's super important. I mentioned innovation platforms. You're talking about like bedroom entrepreneurs, but it's the same thing, really. And I sort of hold up the same warning that smart cities will fail if we don't work super hard on the governance. And we've been trialing data trusts in Smart Dubai with some private sector partners. And to cut a very long story short, because my colleague Hamda's put in an awful lot of work drafting legal agreements that align the motivations and concerns of these private sector partners so that data can be shared and then you can actually use it. And I make a point here about cities versus countries, and because I think you Australian colleagues were saying you live in a sort of like a triple level federal to local government, and I've got a little bit of experience of that from the UK as well. It's just as arduous. But I think cities are the places in which we have to do things. We have to, drive this innovation. And I would sort of, it's a bit naughty of me, but I'll go to a place other than Australia or the UAE or Dubai, and it's our friends in Canada, and it's our friends in Sidewalk Labs who are trying to run the waterfront development project in Toronto. One of the interesting things I've heard about them in the last few weeks is that actually they're really starting to crack this idea of an urban data trust. And that is an awfully large effort. They will have many providers of infrastructure, many development companies like Lend-Lease, which I saw on one of the slides, and a whole host of citizen data concerns. It's been a very sort of live issue there. And then also, just the bubbling under of innovation that comes from SMEs. And I see the data trust or the urban data trust model as one where, it's governed by a charter about how data can be used. And we have to look to those sorts of models in places like cities where I'd argue that the scale is right. And I think this is where my colleague Dr. Khan was saying as well, that cities have an advantage that we need to play. So I sort of wave a flag for the backroom boys and girls in governance. They've got a really important role to play.
Thank you, Andrew. Justin, my last question to you, speaking of innovation and technology, how will Australian innovation and technology be showcased at Expo 2020 in Dubai?
Well, first, let me say we're really excited about participating in Expo 2020, and we've put a lot of thought into how we reflect Australia on that global stage. So, like any nation, people already have perceptions of a particular country. We'll play to some of those strengths. We're clean and green. We're known for our wheat and our meat and food and all of those things, and kangaroos, and we'll certainly highlight our great culture. But little do people know that we're a very innovative nation, and innovative by necessity. So being geographically isolated to a degree and having a large land mass and a relatively small population, everything we do needs to be efficient and effective. So whether that be transport or providing education or social services. So it's inherent in Australia's DNA to be really innovative. So it's about pulling the best of those things that we do and bringing them to Dubai, but picking the ones that we think are contributing to the global conversation. So the theme for Expo 2020 is connecting minds, creating the future. So how is Australia contributing to particular issues that solve problems? So we're doing collectively around the world a whole range of projects and things, and it's about pulling those particular projects where we're assisting in terms of supporting the sustainable development goals that were mentioned earlier, or sustainability issues, or particular health issues, and bringing those ones that are relevant to Dubai, the ones that are really interesting too. You need to remember that Expo 2020 is like, in our approach, it's a large competition, right? We're competing with other nations. There'll be 193 countries here, so it's about bringing the things that provide real value and are differentiators for Australia, but at the same time, remembering that we don't know everything. So we're here to learn. So it's about bringing our best and brightest from Australia, but then stimulating the conversation by, you know, having roundtables, having think tanks. We'll be having councils and forums. We'd love to do something with Smart Dubai where we bring our best and brightest people and we talk about some of these challenges and we share our experiences. So in terms of how we'll do that, Austrade has announced that they'll have a landing pad within our pavilion, so we'll have startups from around the world. The third month of Expo is about travel, and then Sustainable Development Goals the next month. So we'll be aligning our programming, and we think, you know, across the 6 months we'll have about 120 to 150 events in that period, and that could be a small TED Talk type event through to a gala dinner, but it'll be about really bringing the world together in one place and talking about some of those challenges. So you will hear things about, you know, Industry 4.0 and AI and big data, but if I have my way, the conversation will be about outcomes. So what are we trying to achieve? And that's probably a little bit disappointing to the geeks in the room, but it'll be more about what are we achieving and how are we actually contributing to the challenges that the globe faces. So we're really excited, and we're hoping to do that in a very fun and exciting and engaging way, and looking forward to the event.
Thank you. Steve, Rick, or Ashton, do you have any particular comments on this last question?
Yeah. One thing I probably would say, as a Accelerator 71, so it's Accelerator, I'm the CEO of Accelerator 71, so what we've seen, I lived in Dubai for like 10 years and before I moved to Australia, and then I'm back here again. I see the government within mandates and deadlines, the government run like a startup, and then the public sector running very fast and the private sector has to catch up. In Australia, it's the opposite way. We're trying to do that. What we are trying to do is two things. One, I've seen a lot of projects, government projects to do with the blockchain, AI, and as well as big data. So our company, our team, what we're trying to do is centralize all the projects, not working with Dubai Future Accelerator as well as Austrade. We're trying to allocate resources, allocate innovation, talent, and bring it here, vice versa. So, and also thinking of building a platform where if you have any sort of a project, currently like a lot of RFP process of government projects are sort of a long cycles. We're thinking of how do we break into small pieces where someone from Siberia, a developer, can contribute one part instead of team have to come here and commit and do that work. So it's an innovative platforms to build so people can contribute, globally. So that creates a really fast innovation. So we're focusing on that area from Australian point of view, bring more innovation to Expo 2021 and also blockchain strategy.
Thank you.
From my point of view, I was involved in another life, if you like, in the setup of Expo as part of the program management team on the governance side. So I can't wait. I mean, to achieve what's been achieved and open on in a year's time, it's going to be amazing. So I can't wait.
Great.
Yeah. I think and sort of going back to the data piece, I mean, the data collected through Expo 2020 will be quite amazing, and particularly when you take the correlation of the data in different data sets and put that together to look at some really interesting outcomes, not as the individual pieces, but how they combine. So, the people, the locations, the events, the weather, all that stuff together to make some really valuable, smart city information that can really have some impact, not just here in Dubai, but also globally. I think that's really exciting.
Great. Well, this closes my question to the panelists. Now I will open the floor for a couple of questions, if any, from the audience. And anybody? Yes, we have a question there.
Good morning. I'm Nabil. I work for Mohammed bin Rashid Housing Establishment. My question is, I think, for Dr. Hogan. You have shed some light on data commercialization or data monetization. My question is for small organizations like ours that gears its services toward small subset of UAE or even Dubai population. What are, I would say, the helpers or what are the pillars that help such organizations define the value of their data? We are just still groping our ways to define the value of our data. What would help us to do that in an efficient way?
I would say, first of all, identifying the data that you have, which has real strategic value, would be important. I'm sure you have lots of data sets. You know, you provide services to the public, you do things internally. So just going over the inventory of your data maybe, and identifying the data sets which will really provide value to external customers would be important. And I think if you go through that exercise, I don't think you will probably reach more than a handful of those. And I'm not saying it just for your organization. For most organizations, even for private sector, this is the reality. Because you know, you can look at the value at the end and just rank them. And then the second thing is maybe not thinking from your perspective, but from your customer's perspective. The use case that we discussed, you know, putting in a context how the customers would use that data. And if they perceive that value or not. I would actually probably talk to even the potential customers just to, you know, bounce the idea and see if they would be willing to pay for it. I'm just talking very much on the ground now, you know, bringing commercialization from theory to practice. And then putting a certain dollar value where they see the value would be very important. Because sometimes we own the data, we know the value for it, but we are not good in communicating it to the users of the data. And then, you know, putting the dollar value, you can even work together with your customers in some cases, because they have to perceive that value. If you just do all that exercise and then say, this is the value of the data, you know, it would be hard for them to perceive that value. So it's very important to show them the value, maybe take them along the journey with you, with a few customers, pilot customers. Yeah. And then you can go to other data sets and do the same. But I think the most important thing is thinking from the customer perspective, because they are the consumers of the data. We are the producers. So we have to almost shift the hats and think from a customer perspective. I hope that kind of answers. There are no, you know, as I said, well-known methods of doing this, but I think there will be a challenge in the coming 5 or 10 years for most industries and organizations also.
I know time is tight, so can I just add to that really quickly in shorthand? Commercialization to value, engagement, connecting up supply and demand, something that we will be absolutely trying to do through the decentralized sandbox I've been talking about. So my plea is, as it is to anybody who's interested in those things, to come and play a part when we start to ramp up our activity around this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again. I would like to thank our panelists and a big round of applause for our panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now is the time we have all been waiting for, a coffee break. We will continue the session in 15 minutes.